Alright, what's up, boys? We are here back today with another video, and today we are going to be doing our final and second version of the Seattle Kraken Expansion Draft. The actual draft is going to be tomorrow. I will be live streaming that on Twitch, streaming my reaction, so make sure to tune in for that. So I decided, might as well, since there is the actual realistic protected list that did come out a couple days ago, the real ones that the teams chose. I decided to go ahead and do this once more time, following that protection list that the teams actually did and selecting from their available players. So this is going to be the final version. I'm recording this in the morning of the 20th, so I'm sorry if any news comes out and then one of my picks looks stupid, but this is the last time I'm doing this, and I don't think any more news will come out because it is currently on a roster freeze after that 5 p.m. deadline where teams had to submit their protection lists. There was a roster freeze and no one can make any trades or roster moves or signings, nothing. You just have to sit there and wait till the expansion draft. So, now let's get right into it. So for the first team, we have the Anaheim Ducks, and I decided to select defenseman Hayden Fleury. He's young, only 25. He still has potential to grow into something better. He can play the left and the right. He has a 1.3 cap hit and he's RFA through till 2022. So I think it's just a pretty straightforward answer. There's also Brendan Gooley, Jacob Larson. I had to just skip up on those and just head right for Hayden Fleury. Moving on, though, we do have the Arizona Coyotes, and I selected Christian Fischer from the Coyotes. He's 24, right winger. Again, here we go. Very low cap hit. I'm getting good value at $1 million on him. 24, like I said, still potential to grow. He's a good middle six guy, and I could see himself solidifying him as a top six forward in the near future. But next up, we do have the Boston Bruins, and I decided to go ahead and select a very controversial pick, probably, and that's Curtis Lazar. So there's obviously Jeremy Lozon, who's a lot of people have been choosing because he's young and he's a good defenseman with good value. But I decided to go with Curtis Lazar because he was alright with Buffalo for the first half of the season. But after the deadline, when he got shipped over to the Bruins in the Taylor Hall package, I think he was great with the Bruins. I think he was giving great value for 800K, scoring a lot of points on that fourth line. So I decided to go with him. He's young and he's a good center at good value. So went with him. Next up, though, we do have the Buffalo Sabres, and I went with, sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Gergensons, I believe it is. The only reason I went through with him is because there's a lack of options. No goaltender I want. There's obviously Colin Miller, but I'm trying to keep it at a low cap hit. So I decided to go with Gergensons here. Nothing much to say about it. Just a straightforward pick. No background on it. Next up, we have the Calgary Flames, and I think this one's going to be a more likely pick for all people that do mock drafts, and that is Mark Giordano from the Calgary Flames. He's old, he's a veteran, he can be a leader, he can throw the body, and let's say that 6.75 mil cap hit doesn't end up working out this season. Well, it's only this season. You can honestly even ship him out at the 2022 trade deadline in this upcoming season if it doesn't work out. But I think he can be a solid top four left side defenseman for you with good veteran and leadership. Moving on, we have the Carolina Hurricanes, and I actually went with Jake Bean. I know a lot of people went with Nino Niederreiter. The reason I skipped out on Niederreiter is just because it's a hefty cap hit, and I'm trying to keep it at low value here so I can save for some other guys that I'd like to select later on. So Jake Bean I went with. I know he's a pending RFA, so no contract under right now, but he has a cap hit that's very low, and he's only 23. I can easily see him having good potential to be a solid top four defenseman in the league. So that's why I picked him. But moving on, now we have the Chicago Blackhawks, and I decided to go ahead with Nikita Zadorov. There's kind of a lack of options here. Brett Connolly's not bad, but it's a hefty price. Vinny Hinostroza is a pending UFA. Calvin DeHaan's too much money, so I decided to go with another pending RFA. This guy's a defenseman, 26, and he did not perform well last season, so don't worry about that cap hit. I think we can lower it for his next contract. He throws the body a lot, so let's just go with him. Nikita Zadorov. Next, though, this is going to be a very interesting pick. I know a lot of people will find this unique. I don't know how many people would actually go through with this. That's actually Gabriel Landeskog. So he is the only pending UFA, I believe, on my list. And I decided to go with him because, I mean, if you want to take the safe route, you would go Jonas Donskoy, if not JT Confer, but it should be. Most people are going to take Jonas Donskoy. But I decided to go through with Gabriel Landeskog because I do think since Seattle is just a new team, they have a lot of space to work with. Uh, in terms of cap, and they can sign a guy like Landeskog. They can get Landeskog on 8.5 at max. 28, again, another good leader in the locker room, and he's a guy that can go point per game pace with solid defensive stats as well. So that's why I went with Landeskog. I know, pending UFA, so it's possible he doesn't sign, but you might as well just swing it and try, see what happens. Next, though, we have the Blue Jackets, and I think this is, in my opinion, a no-brainer. Max Domi, I know he had a horrible season, but that was under John Tortorella, who didn't really play him the way he is meant to be played. So I think Max Domi could be given a fresh start in Seattle and play really well. So I don't know if he's actually going to be on the radar for Seattle, but that's my opinion, and I think it just makes the most sense out of anyone here. Next, though, we do have the Dallas Stars, and I decided to go with the left winger Blake Como, 35 years of age. Again, the only reason I went with this is because lack of options. I would not go for Ben Bishop. He's 34 at this point. Not much left in him. Then there's Sakara, who's also 35. He's a defenseman. So I decided just wing it, go Como. He can play that fourth line, get you decent points, and another veteran in the locker room for you. Next, though, we do have the Detroit Red Wings, and I decided to pick up Troy Stetcher from the Red Wings. There's not many options here again. You're not going to take many of these guys, so I just went, screw it, Troy Stetcher, 1.7. He's a right D guy, 27 years of age. Not a bad selection at all for you. But next, we're going to be selecting from the Edmonton Oilers, and that's going to be Alex Stalock. Again, here we go with the lack of options. Now, usually I would go for a guy like Oscar Klefbom, good left-hand defenseman. He can play solid top 4 minutes for you. But the thing is, there has been talks that his career is over and he might not be able to play again after an injury and a surgery that he took. So we'll have to keep our radar on that. But for now, considering that that's a big factor, I'm going to go with Alex Stalock. He's old. He's a good third-string goaltender for you, though. So might as well just go through with it. Now we have another goaltender, and that's going to be from the Florida Panthers. We are selecting Chris Driedger. The reason I'm going through with this is just because there has been multiple reports that the Kraken are trying to lock Driedger up at 3 years and 3.5 million as the annual cap hit. I think he could be a good guy in your tandem, a starter or a backup. We'll have to see, depending on what happens, the whole price situation. We'll see, but I decided to go through with Driedger. Next, though, we do have the LA Kings, and I went with the nice young player in Carl Gunstrom. He's 23, left winger, has potential to be a middle six, maybe top six, probably not anymore, though, so I'd say middle six guy on your team. He's low cap hit, like I said, young, a lot of potential, and there's not many other options here, so that's all I have to say on Gunstrom. Moving on, we have the Minnesota Wild. I went with Carson Soucy. I know, it's not the greatest. I could have gone with Nick Bukestad, but again, I don't see much here. There's also Capo Kakinen, which I could have gone with easily, but I decided to skip on that, and you'll see why later. Next, now this is going to be the big one. No, I did not select Carey Price. I just looked, I mean, to be honest, at first I was thinking, wing it, let's go for it. Now I was like, no, the contract's way too much. I don't want to screw over Seattle for the next half a decade. So then I decided to go Paul Byron, but then I was like, actually, that cap, it's too high. So I switched over to Brett Kulak. He's a left-handed defenseman. He could be a 7th/6th D-man for you. Nothing much you get there, but it's just like the only option here, really. Moving on, we have the Predators, and I decided to go with Cal Yarncroc. Now, I will tell you, I did actually think of going for Ryan Johansson, but it's just such a big gamble, and you don't know if it'll work out in your favor or not, so I decided, no way, let's just leave it out. Let's not do it. So I went with Yarncroc. He's a left winger, middle six guy. He can get you some goals, 100%, so there you go. Next, though, we have the New Jersey Devils, and I went with the left-handed defenseman who could be a solid second pair guy for you probably, and that's Will Butcher. He has a hefty cap hit, I will say that, but you'll see what I plan with him later on. Not much to say on this. Not taking Tango Mango. He's just not performed well any recent time, and there's not many other good options. There is Subban, but that's very high cap hit. So skip on that. Moving on, we have the New York Islanders. Now, this is interesting. I don't know why the Islanders decided to go through with leaving Eberle and Bailey exposed, but it is what it is. They did it. So now we get a free choice if you're Seattle. Honestly, you can't go wrong with Eberle or Bailey. Like, I'm not mad at Seattle if they take Eberle over Bailey. The only reason, to be realistic, I went with Bailey instead is because he has 500,000 less on his cap hit. So I just went with Bailey. They're basically identical. They both score goals for you. So next up, we have the New York Rangers, and I went with Julian Gauthier. Gauthier. I'm sorry, I don't know. He's 23, right winger. I'm not gonna say much on that. Not any other options. Now I will say I did consider D'Angelo, but I don't know if Ron Francis would like to take a guy like him. So whatever. Go Julian. It is. Next, we have the Ottawa Senators. I decided to go with Joshua Brown. I was thinking Chris Tierney, but again, hefty cap hit. Not trying to go for that. No way you're taking Matt Murray. So Joshua Brown, 27, right-hand guy. Decent. He can play his third pair for you most likely. So take him up on a selection. Next, though, we have Ghost from the Philly Flyers. He is a left-hand defenseman, 28 years of age, 4.5 cap hit for the next 2 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was on waivers earlier season. But I still think he can bounce back easily, have a good season, and go back to being a top 4 defenseman in the league or on your roster. So next we have Sam Lafferty from the Pittsburgh Penguins. I was gonna go Brendan Tanev again, though. I'm trying to keep that cap hit low, so I can sign a guy like Gabriel Landeskog and have some cap space left over for a place like free agency upcoming. So we went with Sam Lafferty. Not much to say about the option. 26 center, low cap hit, done. Next, we have the San Jose Sharks. I went with Dylan Gabriel over here. Again, very like the Sharks did a good job at keeping it down as viable options. They have a very old core. There's nothing much I could really go through with here that actually looks good. So Gambrell it is. Bottom 6 guy for you at a low value cap hit. So done. Next, we have the St. Louis Blues, and I think this is honestly just the shot in the dark, but you hope it works out for you, and that's Vladimir Tarasenko. So, Tarasenko, 7.5 cap hit, he was going to get dealt. Looks like the Blues couldn't figure out a trade, so now they're exposing him in the draft. I would go for him 110%. No reason not to. It's a shot in the dark, sure, but there's only 2 years left in contract. So let's say it fails and he doesn't play up to that 7.5, then you leave him after those 2 years. He doesn't get his money in the next contract. It's over with. But I think he will bounce back after those surgeries. We'll see what happens though. Next, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. So the Lightning, they left a lot of good players exposed. A lot of guys with a lot of cap hit. There's Killorn at a high cap hit, same as Johnson, Gord, and Palat. I went with Palat just because I think he's the one that scores the most goals for you, so I decided to go with him. Pretty self-explanatory, so nothing more else to say on that. Now, Leafs are an interesting team because there's Kerfoot, but then there's also McCann. It's obviously down between those two. I mean, Dermott's a third guy that you might take. Probably not, though. So it's between Kerfoot and McCann. I was going to go with McCann, not going to lie, but he's a winger, and I was looking more for a guy at center. I know McCann can play center, but I think Kerfoot's more viable at center and just more trustworthy. So I went with the guy with a little bit more cap hit, 26 center. I think Kerfoot has a lot to prove. He's very underrated on the power play, in my opinion. So we'll see how that goes. Next, though, we do have the Vancouver Canucks. I did go through with selecting, the goaltender Braden Holtby. Not much to say here. We just needed a backup because I was not going to have Stalock be the backup for the team. So I went with Braden Holtby. It's done deal. There you go. Next, we have the Washington Capitals. I went with Brendan Dillon, actually. He's a defenseman. I'm surprised he was exposed. Gonna solidify that left side to be strong. So there you go. The final team, we have Dylan DeMello from the Winnipeg Jets. He's a good right-handed defenseman for you. He can play that second, third pair probably. He's very underrated defensively, so I decided to go with him. And now, I will be showing you guys the final team. Look at the final team. Here it is. In terms of forwards, we have Vladimir Tarasenko, Max Domi, Andrzej Palat, Josh Bailey, Alexander Kerfoot, Zemgus Girgensons, Cal Yarncroc, Dylan Gabriel, Christian Fischer, Blake Como, Curtis Lazar, Julian Gauthier, Sam Lafferty, Carl Gunstrom, and Gabriel Landeskog. In terms of defense, we have Mark Giordano, Shane Gostisbehere, Brendan Dillon, Will Butcher, Dylan DeMello, Carson Soucy, Brett Kulak, Troy Stetcher, Hayden Fleury, Joshua Brown, Jake Bean, and Nikita Zadorov. Bean and Zadorov are both RFAs. Landeskog's the UFA. And then for the goaltenders, we have Brendan Holtby, Alex Stalock, and Chris Krieger is a UFA. But like we said, it's looking like he's signing at 3.5 for 3 years. So that's the final look at the team that we drafted. But now I will be showing you guys some of the trades that I decided to go through with. So in terms of trades, I decided to go through with the first trade that I decided that was needed is that we did have a pretty weak right side if you look at the roster. So I went with a trade picking up none other than Seth Jones, baby. So there you go, Seth Jones, and I'll show you the return. The return is Will Butcher, Carson Soucy, Joshua Brown, and a 2022 second-round pick via Seattle. So that's the pick I decided to go through with. Seth Jones, I mean, you could argue that Seth Jones is worth more than what I gave up, but to be honest, he, in my opinion, hasn't performed up to as good as he should have these past 2 years to get good enough value. So that's a trade we went through with. I think it works for Seattle. Seth Jones could be a top 2 defenseman on the right side for the Kraken for these upcoming years. And the second trade I decided to go through with is trading away Girgensons and Brett Kulak, and in exchange acquiring a 2022 4th-round pick via Florida and 2022 7th-round pick via Florida. The only reason I made this trade is just to shred off cap. There was no reason. These players were just extras, multiple extras actually, so they were like 8th D-man, 15th on the list for forward. So I decided to dump that salary, especially Girgensons at $2.2 million. You dump him, and you leave some cap space open for free agency. And now, after those trades, here's the look at the final roster. The final roster has Gabriel Landeskog, Tarasenko, Domi, Palat, Bailey, Kerfoot, Yarncroc, Gabriel, Fischer, Como, Lazar, Gauthier, Lafferty, Gunstrom, Giordano, Seth Jones, Gostisbehere, Brendan Dillon, DeMello, Stetcher, and Fleury, and then same goaltenders, Holtby, Drieger, and Stalock. And then in terms of the lineup, this is obviously just projected. They can easily change this to however the Kraken would like, but I decided to go with Landeskog, Domi, and Tarasenko on the first line. The second line is Josh Bailey, Alexander Kerfoot, and Andrzej Palat. The third line is Cal Yarncroc, Dylan Gabriel, and Christian Fischer. The fourth line is Carl Gunstrom, Curtis Lazar, and Julian Gauthier. And then the extras are Blake Como and Sam Lafferty. In terms of defense, we went with the first pair of Mark Giordano and Seth Jones, second pair of Ghost and Stetcher, and third pair of Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello. The extra is Hayden Fleury as your 7th D-man who can play left or right. And in terms of the goaltending tandem, you have Chris Krieger at 3.5 for 3 years and Brendan Holtby. And then your third string goalie is Alex Stalock. After this, you have a leftover cap space of 3.6 to use in free agency or just save up for any trades you'd like to make throughout. And you are still stacked in draft picks. You just lose that 2022 second, but you also gain a 4th and a 7th in 2022 via Florida. So finally, I'd like to touch up on some strengths and weaknesses of the Seattle Kraken lineup in the 2021-22 season. Some strengths that I definitely see is that they have a high goal-scoring top 6, without a doubt. They also have a strong left side on the defensive core. and they also have a low cap hit, the bottom six, which is gonna help them give them more space to make some moves. Some weaknesses that I see though is they don't have a starting goaltender, so you could say they have a weak tandem. They have a weak right side on the fence in terms of the second and third pair on the right side. And they also don't have much cap space. You can see they only have $3.6 million in cap space left over that they could use, which isn't a lot. So, that's it for this one, boys. Let me know your thoughts on my team below. I personally think my team was pretty strong. I liked how it looked. So, let me know your guys' teams and anything that you would change with mine. And that's it for this one, boys. See you in the next one. Peace.